So people that hate sumo deadlifts, specifically these Johnny one plate, down bad and muscle mommies DMs ass lifters that are just have no fucking qualifications or reason to speak on someone's sumo deadlift. I'm talking about you motherfuckers. Sumo deadlift is not a lesser feat of strength than conventional deadlift. So if you see someone and they pull 800 pounds of sumo, doesn't suddenly mean that your 400-pound strapped, hitched bumper plate conventional deadlift that you barely got with your hype man gassing you up in the background is anywhere near comparable or a more real feat of strength. You look at a big sumo deadlifter and their spinal erectors are jacked. Their legs are jacked. They're jacked overall because it's a relevant feat of strength. All right, so that's my opinion piece for today. Like always, you know, if you have a rebuttal to that or have some additional thoughts to offer, please leave them down below. Just, of course, be civil. Don't take it personally unless you're the Johnny one plate that I'm referring to that has an extreme hitched bumper plate strapped clown lift. Then take it very personally. Actually, the first question, and I don't even have to look into my phone to get to this one, but it was a question asking how you could compare like progress on sumo deadlift versus conventional deadlift because they are, you know, different lifts. So I would say that they're different just in the capacity of they're positionally different, right? So I think that you can still compare the two fairly just because two people's positioning on a conventional deadlift may be totally different. So like someone with longer arms and just overall better levers for conventional deadlift would look different from someone like my boy Freaky D, who has the most terrible deadlift leverages I've ever seen in my life, you know? So I think that they are comparable. It's just overall playing to your strengths in terms of being able to position yourself. That's my opinion on that. I do think that there's some nuance for the topic, but just like I said in the opinion piece, there's no reason to disqualify a sumo deadlift as an illegitimate feat of strength. Like, for example, take any big sumo deadlifter. You would not be able to sumo deadlift their sumo deadlift. You wouldn't be able to conventional deadlift their conventional deadlift, you know what I mean? But yeah, man, it's just all about positioning. So this was a very interesting question that I think a lot of you guys are going to enjoy just because we all enjoy weighted pull-ups and dips. Is street lifting and just a deep dive regarding just training for it. So to my knowledge, and someone can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I don't think that they take into account total body weight when, you know, you're in a street lifting competition. It's the weight added that, you know, ends up getting compared. So for example, Smaev compared to my boy Matthew's lat. He weighs way more than Matthew, but I think that Matthew lifts like a higher plate loaded number, even though like his total weight is way less because Smaev is way fucking bigger than him. So in a street lifting competition, he outperforms him on the weighted dip and the weighted pull up. I think that just my general advice would be, you know, any weight that you gain for the most part during a bulk wouldn't really detriment your weighted calisthenics progress. So I said I was going to make a separate video yelling at y'all about this, but we could talk about it here. If you say, for example, gain 2 pounds to put 30 pounds on your weighted pull-up, in what reality does you gaining a little bit of weight not behoove you? It's kind of like this, like gaining 30 pounds all at once, yeah, that would detriment your performance if you were doing weighted calisthenics, like weighted dips, weighted pull-ups, but nobody's gaining fucking 30 pounds all at once. It's gradual over time. That being said, even if you gain over the course of your entire bulk 20 or 25 pounds, if you're doing your due diligence with your training, you're accumulating a lot more strength per month than you're putting on weight per month in terms of body weight. So I don't think it's anything that most people need to worry about. However, what I will say is that if you're looking to maximize your performance, you would go through that off season of bulking, you know, where you're increasing your weighted dip, you know, weighted pull up and so on. And then before competition, you would cut down. And because you've cut down and you've maintained your performance on your weighted pull ups and weighted dips, you would just be that much stronger for it in a competition sense, since I think that they judge it based off of total load added. Like I said, I could just be completely pulling that out of my ass. So that would be the way I would go about it if I decided I wanted to do something like that. This is from Libra. What is the best approach when you end up missing one or several training sessions due to injury, sickness, or other factors out of your control while on a training program like Branded, where you get most of your work pre-planned in terms of load and reps? I think that extra rest in terms of, like unplanned, occurrences in life could potentially even be beneficial. Now, if it's something where you're taking maybe 4 days off between training sessions, maybe that will disrupt the flow a little bit. But I think that a good middle ground to just talk about both scenarios would be, if it's just a day or two, follow the program as prescribed. But this is where the understanding training principles comes into play versus the following methods. I would just go by feel, right? So you would take your top set at whatever the weight prescribed is, and if it feels great, run it as written. But if you do the top set and you feel after 2 or 3 reps out of an 8 rep set you're not going to be able to get all 8, you might get like 6, use that as a warm-up and then dial back the weight a little bit and then move accordingly. And then you'll find is that the week after that, like the week subsequent to that, you're going to be able to pick up the program as written, just as long as that unplanned occurrence just doesn't keep happening. So this was a question from Home Slice. Isolations, lagging, like being stuck on curls, how to break plateaus on smaller movements. Would you change up the rep range, less or more variability? I've seen so many struggle with this. I've seen a lot of people struggle with this too. I think that for smaller isolations like that, rep quality becomes more important the less you're able to load something, if that makes sense. So rep quality is never not important. You could progressively overload just by making a rep less shitty. But I think that if you're doing things with your curls, like really feeling the contraction and really feeling the eccentric over time, what you'll find is, so say for example, we'll just use the number that you gave. So 25 for a set of 12 on curls, right? Let's just say you get to that with a slower eccentric, and then you'll find when you go back to your more standard rep cadence, you'll be able to do more than 25 pounds. So I think that that's a really good strategy for things like that. Now, what I'll also say is that it's kind of like a causal relationship, right? So the big movements feed the smaller movements, and the smaller movements feed the big movements. If you're getting generally stronger at like pulls and pull-ups and things like that, I do think that over time, your capacity to perform on curls will get better. Likewise, when your curls get better and you raise that ceiling, you'll be able to get better at your pulls and so on. So it's just more so a time thing. So I would take both those things into account. That's a great question. Okay, this is a really good question. So I want to make a video eventually about just my opinion on Romanian deadlifts. I struggle with making workout tutorials in terms of like exercises, just because that's trite. There's a million fucking videos that you can watch on any given exercise. So if I talk about one specifically, it's because I haven't heard someone talk about it, or there's an application that I haven't heard someone talk about. But CK asks, can you talk about shoulder position during Romanian deadlifts? I struggle bad with posture, so I try to cue shoulders back and down in every situation. However, when doing RDLs, the weight pulls my shoulders forward. Should I actively focus on scapular retraction during each rep, or just let go of my shoulders? So there's a few different ways that you can use Romanian deadlifts or stiff-legged deadlifts, because they're, as much as y'all want to argue with me about this, they're both the same thing. One just has a stretch reflex, and one is more concentric based. But I think that you can definitely cue that retracted posture if you're using the movement as something to train that retracted posture. So like, for example, you said you struggle with just your day-to-day posture. I think that that's a really good movement to use for that. You just have to keep in mind that whatever load is too much for you to be able to maintain that posture is too much for you to be able to use it for that purpose. But if your shoulders roll forward on Romanian deadlifts, or just, or neutral, that's perfectly fine as well. So I can't think of one set of stiff leg deadlifts that I've posted on YouTube or social media where my shoulders are completely retracted. They're just not. I'm more so focused on keeping my back extended so that my lower back can take a lot of the load. It's really what the exercise is for. It's a lower back exercise in glutes and hamstrings. But you can definitely use it for that purpose. Just keep in mind that neither is wrong. It's all about application. My brother in struggle, I do not know how to say your name. They said, is it okay to do a Larson press or close grip bench after your main competition bench, and how will it affect recovery? So that's an awesome question. So here's how I think about it, right? So you have a certain amount of sets that you need per week to progress in a given movement pattern. And bench press just happens to be one of those movements where it's very much like based upon the amount of muscle that you have and the amount of relevant intensity that you can push into the movement. Squats low key are kind of like that too if you're not a very technical squatter. So like for me, what I found is that I can push a lot more volume on accessories for bench press, and quite honestly, squats as well, and get a lot better benefit than doing just more squats or more bench press. That being said, it's an individual basis. So you can just as easily feel like that accessory slot that you're using to accumulate volume with a close grip Larson press or a regular close grip bench, because it's fulfilling a different function of a horizontal press. So it could work, you know, definitely try it out, but listen to your body. So if you find that you work a lot better with dumbbell bench or like a hammer strength chest press than a Larson press, do that. Just as a follow-up, so this is from Copper 99. What are your thoughts on competition style bench press for hypertrophy? So I think that this is also a very nuanced question. So for me, bench press is very stimulative because my arms are long as fuck. That being said, because it's very stimulative, I can't do as much of it as someone with shorter arms than me. All things being equal, like I can accumulate myself or acclimate myself to accumulating more volume. Like I'm not saying you can't do that, but even if I condition myself to being able to bench press more, classically I'm not able to bench press more than twice per week. Like I just cannot do more than that, where I always, you know, I always degenerate in performance and start to get little overuse injuries. Always. I couldn't be coached by someone that would try to get me to bench more than twice a week because I know it does not work. I've tried everything. I know it doesn't work. But if you're someone that has shorter arms, you may find that it's not as good for hypertrophy. So what I like to say is lay down on the floor, do a floor press. If you're parallel to the floor and you got some space in between your chest and the bar, bench press is a good hypertrophy movement. I guess I was trying to find a non-galaxy braid way to say that, but if you can touch your chest, bench press might not be as good, and low key that floor press that you're doing would be a better hypertrophy exercise because you're doing things like getting a better shortened contraction. You're breaking up the concentric and eccentric, and a lot of people just describe it as feeling like a machine chest press when you have those sorts of leverages. A way that you can simulate those leverages is if you put something like an ab mat down and you just lay on that and do floor presses against that. That's super good. And low key, this may seem like heresy, but it might just be as good, if not better, than the Larson press because it comes with all these other benefits that you don't get on a Larson press. That's dependent, so that could be its own video, but great question, bro. From Tan. NH was talking about how lifters sabotage themselves by decreasing volume significantly when going on a cut before ever having recovery issues and needlessly losing strength. Yes, I super agree with that. What's your take on adjusting volume when going on a cut? So this is one, not your question, bro, but there's a question that when I get it, just, you don't know what you don't know, so I'm not getting angry at you. I am just so angry at the meta of online fitness that just made people think that a cutting program and a bulking program are even fucking concepts that you need to think about. For the most part, a program that you're running while you're bulking versus when you're cutting is going to be the same thing with some nuance that we're going to talk about. The only difference is your rate of progress. That's all, right? So the smaller nuances are that, as you cut, you may find that certain movements that you could recover from in certain volumes and intensities you do need to switch them for less fatiguing movements. But even then, if you're cutting from 25% body fat to 17% body fat, you're more than likely not going to encounter any of those problems, just because you're cutting to a relatively higher body fat percentage still. You know, you're still 17% body fat. You really only encounter that when like you get dick skin lean, like you're less than 10% body fat. Yeah, then you might not be able to recover from a program that's maximized for squat performance or deadlift performance. And you may have to start doing things like back extensions, good mornings, things like that. Other than that, it's just small things like maybe, you know, going from a 7-day split to a 9-day split so you can get more rest, maybe. But you should only do things as you need them to an extent when it comes to reducing volumes and things like that. So like, I do think that, you know, you should be including certain things in your program just as quality of life stuff. So like a quality warm up that you do no matter what and things like that. But it's not a hard, fast rule that you necessarily need to reduce your volume on a cut per se. You know, like, it's just, you do it if you need to. It may come, it may not. You'll have to find out, but you'll know when you need to. All right, so last question was from an OG, weakest man in the world. This is off of Instagram. So he essentially asked, like, what's a good middle ground if you have, Dave Tate likes to call it multiphasic goals. That's like the term that he likes to use. And that basically is just a galaxy brain way of saying, what do you do if you're someone that wants to be good at X, Y, and Z and not just one or the other? Specifically, weakest man in the world asked, and he's pretty strong actually, it's just a funny username, but he asked, like, what if I want to be good at cardio and lifting weights? Like, what's a good middle ground? I think that if you're a normal sized dude, and I mean like normal meaning like you're between 160 and like 200 something pounds, and you're like of a regular height and you're not a giant, I think that you can include regular running if you maintain like a reasonable mileage, one, and that your running form is good. You have a quality pair of running shoes and you're just not pushing past the place of discomfort in your knees and your ankles and hips and everything that you know damn well it's going to detriment your squat training. Now, if you just care about having good cardiovascular health, I don't even necessarily think that you need to run, to be honest with you. I think that, you know, the assault bike, I'm always going to shield the assault bike. That's really beneficial to do. The elliptical is very, you know, easy on your hips and your ankles and things like that. I think that swimming is awesome. All of those things give you just as good as a bang for your buck in terms of your cardio, without being as, I guess you could say, invasive on your fucking knees and hips and things like that. But I think you could even reasonably fit running into the equation. But if you are a guy that's larger, like you're 250 pounds plus, cock diesel, even if you're a little chubby even, I do think that you should, as a rule, limit high impact exercises, because you weigh so much more than the average guy, and that high impact exercise has a higher impact on your body than it would on me, who weighs significantly less than you. Just balance, you know. You'll know your limits. You have to kind of, I'm not telling you to go out and do this, but you only know your limits sometimes if you push close to them. You're like, okay, if I did a little bit more than this might be a problem, and this is probably the most I can do, so I'm gonna do about this much, and that's gonna be my normal. So experiment with it and just keep those principles in mind, bro. I appreciate you. You've been running with me since, you know, the diaper days of my YouTube channel and my Instagram, so I appreciate you. Excellent questions. Let me know if you have any questions about these questions. It's colder than a witch's tit out here. I hope you appreciate me coming out here and recording this shit for y'all. Y'all have a good one.